Well, hello and welcome back to Between the Sundays. Just a show for us to continue the conversation between Sundays from what's
Mhm,
happening here at Generations Church. And sometimes it takes on a life of its own, and it's all kinds of things that are coming up or things that have already happened. But
mhm.
today I'm excited. I've got Pastor Aaron White, who is our executive pastor of ministries. Got Pastor Trevor Heineman, who's our executive pastor over admin and operations, kind of the support structures of our church.
Mhm.
And so I'm glad you guys are here because one of the first things that I want to jump into is, we say it's now the fall,
Yeah.
because school started back. A lot of people are
But
like,
it's
no, it's still
1,000 degrees
summer.
outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got in my car yesterday and it said it was 99. So it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like fall.
Definitely not fall.
But because the kids are back in school, not just
Mhm.
our kids, but the idea of like our community kids, public
Yeah.
schools start back in our community August 1st.
The fall
We
semester.
tend to kind of categorize the fall ministry season as starting when families start back to school
Yep.
in that
Mhm.
rhythm. So that doesn't affect everybody, but it is the way we transition. And so we're coming out of summer,
Mhm.
and summer this year for me was different than
Mhm.
any time in the history of our church. Our church is about 12 years old or so when you kind of go back to when we were campus of Mount Perry North, and then we became autonomous. But our board and the leadership of our church allowed Corey and I to step away from kind of the day to day weekly ministry of the church for a sabbatical. First time we've ever
Mhm.
done that, for about 6 or 7 weeks. And so you guys really shouldered the load along with our staff team
Yeah.
and our board. And so, first of all, let me just say thank you to you
Mhm.
guys. It was an incredible gift to me and to our family. But it also well done because
Mhm.
our team, our staff team, you guys led really well. We had some incredibly large attendance Sundays, even in the
Yeah.
midst of the
Yeah.
summer. We went to 2 services from 3. We had vacation Bible school. We sent a bunch of kids and leaders to camps.
Mhm.
We had a missions trip. Like, there
Yeah.
was a lot going on, and you guys did really well. So, I'll start with you, Aaron. I'd love for you just to kinda highlight maybe the 1 or 2 things that just stood out to you from the summer,
Man.
that just you love to celebrate.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I thought of when I thought about this summer, and I don't want to steal Pastor Trevor, so I'm not going to hit on group side of it, but
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah,
is I think it was a summer, like to label it, it was a summer of community.
that's great.
And so I'll let you hit
Yeah.
on the groups,
Yeah.
but I even think from the serving on different G team roles, serving as leaders at camp, but then also VBS. I mean, we had like 70 volunteers for VBS and we had 120 kids, and like the community that was built. And then
Yeah.
4th of July, there was community. And so it reminded me of Acts 2, of like the fellowship of
Yeah,
believers
that's great.
and like the continuing meeting together. And so I kind of chalked this summer up to like the summer of community,
I love
and
that.
people were doing life together. There's a story that Pastor Carson shared yesterday of a guy who started attending, I think, late May. Trevor and I met him like middle of June because he volunteered to drive the van for middle school
Yeah.
students.
That's
And
amazing.
so that was our first time meeting him.
Yeah,
And I honestly, I think he'd been coming for maybe 2 weeks. But he said this past week that he's never felt more at home
mm,
at any other church.
Yeah.
And that just kind of speaks to the community that was built this summer,
it's
that
great.
someone could come in, drive a van, but then serve for VBS. And he was like, everybody knows my name.
Yeah,
Now I need to learn everybody's name.
yeah,
But he was like, I've never felt more at home. And that, like, man, that speaks to this summer of like the
yeah.
community that was built.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's great. What about you, Trevor?
yeah, I think oftentimes, you go into summer and it's like, okay, this is a 2-month time to just kind of take our foot off the gas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I really feel like this year, like, we kind of did the opposite. Like, it was more like, okay, well, like, this is an opportunity to really engage people. They're
yeah,
not in school. They may be doing different things. And yeah, a lot of people went on vacations, but they're not on vacation for 8 straight weeks. Like,
Yeah.
right.
and so we really were intentional of let's connect to people, like
Mm,
Pastor Aaron was saying. And so, like, I mean, this year we launched summer groups for really
Mhm.
the first time in the history of Generations
yeah,
Church, having a summer semester of groups and kind of following the school. Like, we do a fall semester of groups, a spring
Mhm.
semester of groups. We're like, hey, let's do a summer. And so we did summer cookout groups
yeah,
where it was like super low key.
Mhm.
It was very just relationally driven. And hey, get together with a group of people and do a cookout once in June and once in July. And man, just the stories that came out of that of people that, hey, we've been around for a while, but hey, let's just take the opportunity and jump into a relationship.
yeah,
Like, I just, I would have never really thought like you're going to get a lot of new people to
Yeah.
jump into one of those
yeah,
groups. I really kind of thought going into it was going to be like, the people that have been around and they've
Yeah.
already been in group and they just want to continue. But the numbers of people that were like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to jump into a group for the very first time
Right.
during the summer, just kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
And so it was just a really cool summer of seeing like new people truly jump in. We had new people serving. We had new
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
joining groups. We have new people leading groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And all of that taking place over the summer when oftentimes you kind of go in and like, hey, let's just take our foot off the gas.
Mhm.
And again, everybody
Sure.
vacationed. Like
Yeah.
our staff took time off as they needed to.
Sure.
But when we were here, man, we worked hard.
Yeah.
The staff worked hard to prepare for the fall, but not just like look ahead, but to focus on the people that are there in the now.
That's
Yeah.
good.
It's good.
Well, it was interesting because, some of the time we were on sabbatical, like we would, watch the service, and usually we watched it late because we were attending some other churches during the time, but we would go back and watch the service, and I'd be like, oh, I see that person serving on the stage. I haven't seen them in a while. I don't know who that
Mhm.
is. Or I would hear stories once I got back, like, oh yeah, so and so, and I'm like, well, who is that? And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, they've served all summer, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even know who they are, and they're serving this vital key role in
Yeah.
some team. But yeah, I do think coming back, in kind of jumping into the fall, the stories that you all have been sharing, the staff team has been sharing in some of our meetings and staff meetings and things, like just some of the individuals that got connected. You guys were telling a story. I think you started the story even yesterday, of a guy that somebody recommended that he join one of the groups, and then he joined a second group, and
Mhm.
like his
Oh,
wife
yeah.
called and was like, hey, can he go hang out with these guys, like just
Yeah.
looking for community.
Yeah.
And so I love that theme, or that kind of titling of this summer, because I do feel like that was a lot of what took place.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. And I think it's one of kind of the four pillars of what we want to help people do,
Yep.
is to
Mhm.
find community.
Yeah.
And so I love that in the summer, where maybe there's a little more margin, not for everybody.
Yep.
If you don't have kids in school, it's just like summer's like the
Yeah.
fall, like the
Yeah.
spring. You're just going to work, But for sure, like maybe a little more margin,
Mhm.
maybe a little more intentionality of relationships. There were more people that jumped into some of those things. So
Yeah.
I do think that's great. And
Mhm.
again, Vacation Bible School and summer camp for our student ministry, our kids ministry, the mission trip opportunity.
Yeah.
We'll talk about those at some point. But just really great things happened, and I love hearing those stories, which really led us into kind of the last Sunday of July. Again,
Mhm.
we start a little earlier than some of the churches that we're connected to, just
Yeah.
because of how early school starts.
Yeah.
But we did back to school prayer in July,
Mhm.
July 28th, and we started a family series. And it really was because of the calendar of our community. And so we
Mhm.
wanted to try to just be a resource there for families. A great day, an opportunity to pray over kids and teachers and
Mhm.
faculty members, admin people. And it was just a really great kickoff again to the fall of ministry. So
Yeah.
we started into this family series,
Mhm.
and we're a couple weeks in now. We've got one more week of this series, but really just looking at kind of building a better family.
Yeah.
How do we do that? And I
Mhm.
think for so many of us, if all of us are married, we have kids, and so it's easy for us, if you are married, whether you have kids or not, or you do have kids, to go, oh, I know what I'm thinking about, the people that live in my house.
Mhm.
But all of us also have a family of origin, so thinking
Mhm.
about that. We've talked about faith as the foundation of our
Mhm.
families, like faith as a foundation for me individually, and then in my household for my
Yeah.
wife, my kids. It can't just be an add-on,
Yeah.
like a side dish. That's kind of
Mhm.
been the tag all series of those pieces.
Mhm.
And then the second week, we talked about really forgiveness,
Yeah.
like
So
allowing
good.
God to do a work in our hearts, for us to be able to forgive people that have hurt us, or to seek forgiveness if
Yeah.
we've hurt other people.
Yeah.
And man, not just that day, but since then, just the stories that have
Mhm.
come in, the people that responded. And then the third week, this past week, we just talked about this idea of like friendships, relationships. We looked at the story of David and Jonathan, and kind of the
Mhm.
components of healthy relationships. So I'd love, just kind of what are some of the things that have stood out in the series, or how has it affected you personally, or even your family, or the people that you're doing life with?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the start of the series of going back to kind of, Generations Church, and you went back to Deuteronomy chapter 6 of our
Yeah.
faith is for, us, our children, our children's children. So much of even the core DNA of our church is based on that. And I love that we started that series off with going to that.
Yeah.
We talk about that as a staff all the time, but for all the new people in the church, I think it's super valuable that we went and connected family in this series with who we really are as a church, and
Mhm.
starting of, hey, if you're gonna build, if you're gonna build your family on anything, build it upon the rock that which stands.
Great.
Mhm.
And I think that just kicking the series off going there was so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. What about you, Aaron?
Man, I just love the kind of not just energy around the series, but how well it's connecting with people. I think Faith is Foundation kind of kicked it off, like
Mhm.
Pastor Trevor said. But week two on forgiveness, man, it
Yeah.
was powerful.
Yeah,
In the
there were a
room
lot of hands.
was powerful. A lot of hands raised for just hurt and pain that
Yeah.
has been caused by family. And I think one thing I thought of, if you are in relationship long enough, you're gonna experience pain. Like
Absolutely.
Yeah.
if you're close enough to people for maybe a week or
Yeah.
maybe a
Right.
month, like
Right.
whatever, or years, like you're gonna have situations and circumstances that are gonna happen that's gonna hurt somebody. And a lot of times it's not done intentionally.
Right.
A lot of times it's done unintentionally, but you are going to experience hurt. And one thing you said, and I wrote this down, is undealt with pain isn't dormant, it's damaging.
Mm.
And a lot of times in
Good.
families, you have pain that has happened, but it's not talked about.
Yeah.
And then it starts stirring up, and then it causes division.
Yeah.
And the enemy would love nothing more
It's
than
true.
to
That's right.
divide families, divide relationships, divide coworkers, and so on and so forth. And it was kind of like this Sunday that you were able to speak, and I feel like God was able to move in the room for people to kind of like, I need to deal with this. Like
Mhm.
I need to have the conversation. Like I need to talk with people.
Yeah.
Like the person that has hurt me, and let them know in a loving way, hey, you hurt me, and forgive them. But then also ask for forgiveness. Like, and the kind of trickle effect. I mean, we've had more people reach out for counseling.
Yeah.
I talked with a couple this morning, early this morning, about this, and met with them, and they don't have young children. They're older.
Yeah.
And so like their kids are raised like older and had kids.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And just helping them walk through it, and forgive themselves for the
Yeah.
hurt.
That's right.
And so it's just, and then this past, it's just incredible series that, we planned for it. I mean, in
Yeah.
October, September of
Right.
last year,
Right.
but
Yeah.
then to be in it and see God moving in such a powerful way, it's like,
Yeah.
man, thank you, Lord.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited for the fall, but I'm excited for what God's going to do in family. So
One of the things you talked about, that undealt with pain isn't dormant, it's damaging, and it seemed to be that was one of the key things that people kind of latched onto.
yeah.
And I do feel like in family, a lot of times it's easier just to try to sweep it under the rug, to not deal with it,
Mhm.
not have the hard conversation.
Yeah.
And so it feels like, well, if we don't stir the pot, if we
That's
don't
right.
say anything, that's going to
Mhm.
cause somebody to,
Yep.
to
That's
get
right.
mad, then we're over, and that's
Mm.
fine. But it's really like we're just suppressing it and burying that down in ourselves, but also in the relationship. It's like we're
Yeah.
just kind of hiding it under the couch. Like, don't deal with it. Somebody's coming over, sweep
Someone's
it under,
got to
get
put it in the closet.
throw it away, throw it away. But because we're not dealing with it, it's gonna resurface.
Yeah.
100%.
And one of the things that we use that story that Sunday about Jacob and Esau, and in that story, what set up that point was the idea that when Jacob had deceived his father and stolen the blessing of Esau,
Mhm.
then he's going to run away. But as he's leaving kind of home, uh Isaac blesses Jacob one more time, and he says, I want you to go to this distant country and not marry these Canaanite women. That was
Mhm.
something that his mom had gotten involved in. So he left, and it said that Esau, knowing that that was something his dad didn't want, he actually went and married these foreign women, or
Mhm.
some of these foreign women, to like hurt his dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we talked about the idea that often what happens is, if let's just use this, if Trevor and I are having an issue, if he's
Mhm.
done something to hurt me, if I don't deal with that, somehow it's eventually going to spill out, and I'm going to end up lashing out and hurting you, and you didn't
Yeah.
have anything to do with it.
That's right.
Mhm.
And so, the phrase that I used in that, and I read it in a book a number of years ago, but if you don't deal with it, you're eventually going to bleed on people that didn't cut
Yeah.
you. Like it's this
Good.
idea that
That's
you're
right.
gonna hurt people, or
Yeah.
do something to someone, and they had nothing to do with that original hurt. So you got to deal with your pain.
Yeah.
You got to work through it. You got to process it. Whether it's counseling from licensed counselors, we believe in that.
Yeah.
We
Yep.
refer people there. Pastoral, short-term, crisis-based pastoral counseling, or spiritual advisement, or you're just having the conversations that are necessary
right.
from the hurt that takes place. But
Good.
man, it really was a powerful day, and the response was powerful because it really spoke to
Mhm.
where people are living.
Mhm.
And I think that's just shows how important it is in this season. This next Sunday, Corey, my wife, and I are going to share really to conclude the series, we're gonna talk a little bit just about the family dynamics. We're gonna kind of use some stories and things,
Mhm.
but we are gonna
This
spend
should
some
be good.
time.
Some
Yeah,
Isaac stories are
that's my
coming.
hope. That's my hope. We are going to spend some time though talking a little bit around the pressures that the enemy and culture are using to try to kind of get at our kids, get at our
Mm,
families, whether
Hmm.
that's anxiety and depression and comparison and all these things. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little not as this something that's necessarily inherently evil, but talk about social media and talk about all the various things. So we're going to spend some time there and we're going to do some Q&A. So I'm really
mm,
excited for us to complete this series by just getting as practical as we
That's cool.
can,
mm.
kind of land where people are living, And so I think it's going to be a great day, and so I'm excited about that. And anytime Corey gets to speak, I say this all the time because I mean it. It happens every single time. People are like, "Man, you need to let her speak more. You need to speak less. Let her speak more." She doesn't love to do that. She's incredibly gifted to do it, but
Yeah.
it's always something she's got to work up, the energy to do. But
Every time she does it, though, you're like,
I
just
know.
like say, it's like,
I know.
wow, that
She
was
gets so nervous.
incredible.
She says almost every time she's on stage, she talks about how shy she used to be and how introverted, and that is kind of a natural comfort. But God has gifted her and anointed her when she takes the stage in any form, like she
Yeah.
just, just kind of comes out. But I'm
Yeah.
excited. I always love to speak with her,
Mm,
so that'll be a good day Sunday. And then we've got a ton of things coming up this fall. Just kind of using Corey again, maybe to segue, but looking all the way into the first week of November, we
mm,
open registration in the next week or so for our annual women's event,
mm.
Woven, and it's going to be an amazing night.
Yeah.
It's Saturday, November the 9th,
Mm-hmm.
and we've got an incredible speaker this year, Lisa Harper,
Mm-hmm.
one of the premier speakers in the country.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited that we've been able to get her. Corey reached out to her a number of months ago, probably more than a year ago
Yeah.
now, to invite her to come and be a part of this, and she agreed to come. And so we're expecting a really great night. Kind of capacity crowds. We're
Mm,
opening a couple of different environments in
yeah.
our building for
Yeah.
things, but we're going to open registration again in the next week or so, just for our church family to make
That's
sure
right.
that our ladies can come. And so you've been here for all the Woven events. You've been here for most of them. We're not women, right? We don't.
Yeah.
It's not our event, but we get to kind of sneak in the back and see it. Just maybe talk about quickly the 30-second. What's always so powerful about Woven and these kind of events for the ladies of our church and community.
Yeah, I think, when you look at these type of events, men's events are different than ladies' events.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Ladies, when they get together to worship, it's one of the most incredible things
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they just fully just pour their heart out to God, and just watching a room full of moms and grandmothers and single ladies and just all kind of unified together
Yeah.
for one mass event
Yeah.
is just such a special thing to see.
Yeah.
And Miss Corey does such a great job at putting this event on and making it something to remember.
Yeah.
And so whether it's through, some of the apparel that they can purchase when they're there, or the food that they get to do, or dancing afterwards, or
Yeah.
whatever in
Yeah.
between,
Yeah.
they just have a ton of fun.
Yeah.
But man, do they get close to Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
And so it's kind of this, this both and of like,
Mhm.
man, we're gonna have a lot of fun when we show up that
Yeah.
night. But man, we're gonna like get on our hands and our face before
Yeah.
God
It's
and
great.
just pour our hearts out to Him. And so it's
Great.
such a well done and well planned event to allow both to naturally and organically happen.
It's
Yeah.
great. I
It's
love
good.
it. What's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And then kind of between now and then coming up and just, in like October, we've got At the Movies.
Yeah.
So that's always a great outreach series, just a
Oh, that
lot of
series.
fun.
Yeah.
So we're already kind of preparing for that. Just what do you love about At the Movies? What's the big win for us?
It's an easy ask to invite.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think seeing all the new people come in, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of excitement and the expectation, because we don't release what movies we're doing.
Yeah.
And so like the wonder of like what movie,
Yeah.
but then afterwards you see just a ton of people, they've never seen that
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
gotta go watch the
Right.
movie now. And
Yep.
so I think there's just a lot of excitement. There's popcorn,
Yeah.
there's drinks, there's candy.
It's worth coming for the popcorn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if
Who
nothing
doesn't
else.
love popcorn at 8:30 on a
Yeah.
Sunday, right?
Yeah. It's kind of like salsa,
No,
salsa with a staff. Who doesn't like
That's right.
tacos or
right.
salsa, chips and salsa
Yeah.
after 8:30 service? But it's just an incredible time,
No, it's
fun,
awesome.
Yeah.
easy invite to invite your friends and family to. But the messages within the movies,
Yeah.
man, they sneak up on you, and it's
They
like,
do.
wow, that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's not just I want to see this movie. That message within that
Yeah.
to take that movie was very impactful.
Well, and
So-
I think that's and I say this every time, but man, when we it's the only kind of season of time right now in our church where the message is displayed on video because we
Mm.
kind of put
Yep.
it in encapsulated in the
Yeah.
movie. But man, at the end of that message, every single time,
Mhm.
hands lifted,
Yep.
people
Yeah.
responding. It just reminds us that the gospel goes forth. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
people respond when they experience the good news of the gospel. So I'm thankful for that. It's going to be an incredible fall.
Mhm.
Obviously, we'll be back on here to kind of talk about from some of these weeks of things that are happening as we move forward in ministry. But I'm excited to kind of recap summer, jump into the fall, kind of
Mhm.
naturally kind of feel, hey, this is some excitement, some things. There's a ton of momentum in
For
our
sure.
church. We don't have to stir it up or create it. Like it's here every
Yeah.
week. We're adding chairs and fixing parking issues and just trying to make space for more people.
Mhm.
And so if you're watching and you're a part of our church family, we'd love for you to move to 8:30 or 11:30. But no, we're excited that you're a part of what God's doing here in this
Yeah.
season of
Yep.
time. And so thanks for watching, listening, and we'll see you next time on Between the Sundays.